You're listening to The Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Gulseth.
Our set apart to serve conversation today takes us to camp.
I'm so excited.
Me
Today's
too.
episode of The Coffee Hour is underwritten in part by Concordia University, Nebraska. You can learn more about Concordia University, Nebraska at cune.edu.
Joining us today, Bob LaCroix. He's Executive Director at Camp Omega in Waterville, Minnesota. That's in the Minnesota South District. Bob, welcome to The Coffee Hour.
Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to learn about Camp Omega and what's happening there today. And we're also going to jump on over to Camp Perkins. Joining us today, Signe White. She's Executive Director of Camp Perkins in the Sawtooth Mountains of Idaho. Signe, welcome back to The Coffee Hour.
Well, it's great to be back.
I am excited. The sun is shining here in St. Louis today while we're recording this, which means it's warmer weather.
Mm-hmm.
It's time to start thinking about things we're doing this summer. And
outdoor activities.
I'm signed up for camp this summer. Are you, Sarah?
No.
You will be by the end of this episode, I bet.
We always say that, and it still hasn't happened. One of these days, that will be true.
By the end of the episode, you might. So let's talk about where you live and serve. Bob, let's start with you. Tell us about where you currently live and serve.
Sure. As you said, I'm the Executive Director of Camp Omega in Minnesota South District, and my family and I are blessed to be able to live right on site. So we get to see action and guests that experience Jesus at this place 24/7. It's been a fun journey.
Where is Waterville, Minnesota, for those who aren't familiar with Minnesota geography?
Sure. I always tell folks we're about an hour's drive, if the weather is good and the traffic is good, south of Minneapolis and St. Paul, and just 15 minutes off the interstate from Farrell.
Okay. Seems reasonable. Signe, what about you? Where do you currently live and serve?
I live and serve at Camp Perkins, which is in central Idaho. It's near Stanley, Idaho, which I'm sure very few people have heard of, but you might have heard of Sun Valley, sort of the playground of the Hollywood stars, none of whom I have ever met. And they don't come to camp, but they are all invited. And I would say Camp Perkins is one of the most unique settings in our Lutheran camps. In the Sawtooth Mountains, we're on federal land. And in the winter, that's one of the most unique parts of it is that we get to ride in on giant snow vans with tracks like you might see on a tank. So it's one of the most unique experiences in the LCMS camp world.
That sounds awesome.
I think we need a snow van here.
I think we
winter.
need a snow van. Well, ice van for all the ice. Snow sounds way more fun.
It definitely is.
We'll talk a little bit more about your individual camps in just a minute, but let's share your stories. Who encouraged you to consider full-time church work? Let's start with you, Signe.
I was blessed to be raised in a home where faith was an active part of our day and every week. So I was raised by a mom who made sure that we got to church. And though church work wasn't something that was talked about, certainly having faith as a part of your everyday life was in that. And as a result of that, I opted to go to Concordia University, Wisconsin. And so very thankful for that. But I was not planning to go into church work at that point. And then I was asked the question that every camp program director asks every college student they ever meet, which is, hey, what are you doing this summer? And my answer was nothing. And I ended up working at Camp Pioneer in New York. And through that experience, I discovered that I actually like young adults, high school age, and I pivoted my career option to become a high school teacher and spent the first 5 years of my ministry doing that. So I didn't go to Concordia University with the plan to be a church worker, but that's where I ended up as a result of spending a summer at Camp Pioneer. Oh, and the name of the person is Amy Pichot, in case anyone asks.
What was that journey that took you from high school teaching into camp ministry?
Well, once again, it's the path of somebody telling somebody else something about you. So the program director at a camp in North Idaho, at Luther Haven in North Idaho, was related to the camp director at Wall Camp in Northern Illinois and said, hey, you're looking for a program director. You should check out this person named Signe. They called me and I said, no, thank you. And then they called again and said, really, you should think about it. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll just come visit for the heck of it. And sure enough, they convinced me that this was the place for me. The real trigger for me was I loved being a teacher. I loved working with young adults. I loved sharing time with them. In the classroom, I had an opportunity to share my faith because I was at a Lutheran school. I was doing Lutheran school teaching at Valley Lutheran in Saginaw. However, it wasn't the purpose of my everyday. I was teaching Shakespeare, and those are all great things. But I decided that I wanted to spend all day, every day, having an opportunity to shape the faith through experiences for young adults.
Bob, how about for you? Who encouraged you to consider full-time church work?
Along with Signe's upbringing, parents are pretty influential. We were involved in the church growing up and heavily involved there. And I knew I liked people, and I knew I liked sharing Jesus, and I liked being outside. So my goals were to get into critical education and teach secondary ed biology. So I attended one of our synodical schools, and things just didn't go so well. I ended up quitting after a month and moving back home and finding a job and just being restless and discontent, and happened to just call out to Camp Omega and said, "Hey, looking for a job. What do you got to offer?" He says, "Well, we don't have anything full-time, but you could apply to be a counselor." And so I did. So I started my journey here at Camp Omega, where I ended up now. And along that way, a lot of college professors, and actually the former director of Camp Omega, Kevin Hall, was inspirational. And um, I ended up going back to school at Concordia St. Paul and getting a certification as a DCE in outdoors ministry and youth ministry, and journeyed around the country a little bit at some different camps, and then settled here back at Camp Omega when the position became available. So that life experience, that journey of between high school and college, was a tough one, and Lord had to hit me with a 2x4 to get me to turn paths, but he did that and pressed through it, and he opened up some new doors, and it's been this way since '95. So it's been a fun journey.
Tell us some of the highlights from your DCE formation at Concordia University St. Paul.
Lots of one-on-one times with professors. I'd have to say Dr. Steve Arnold and Dr. Rich Carty were pretty influential in that faith development, just sitting in the picnic table outside in the knoll and having informal conversations, and then the relationship with other students and hearing their life struggles and just being in that community. I also had the opportunity to spend 16 months on a outdoors ministry internship at Camp Luther, Wisconsin, and I served part-time in the church and part-time at Our Saviors in Eagle River in Wisconsin. And so those relationships there, they're pretty influential on people who continue to shape the ministry and the person that I am now. And then, as I said, I've had opportunity to serve at different sites, and each site I get to work with different people with different skill sets, and was able to acquire and learn from them, and continue to help shape and mold me into the person I am now.
So let's talk about why summer camp is so influential, so important for campers. Why are summer camps so important for your campers, and how do camps feed the faith and the life of your campers? Bob, let's start with you.
Sure. I always resort back to the Deuteronomy 6 passage where, we say these commandments that I give today are to be upon your hearts, and you should talk to your children when you're sitting at home, and when you walk along the road, and when you lie down, and when you get up. And I think of camp as that. It's a place where you get to live life. You get to be formally in the Word, sit down, Bible study, open scripture, read, share, and then you get to informally practice that throughout your time in a temporary community, with playing together, working together, laughing together, crying together, eating around the table together, or at cookouts, playing games together, just living life as a Christian. And then when things come up, you have the opportunity to sit down and talk about it, and bring Jesus into the conversation about how a Christian reacts and doesn't react and lives together. And it's different. I remember in kindergarten seeing my kindergarten school teacher, Lutheran school, in the grocery store for the first time, thinking, "Oh, who are you?" Right? Unfortunately, we don't get to see our congregational leaders or our school leaders in other settings than the formal settings of worship and youth group and those kind of things. So outdoors ministry has an opportunity to have formal teachers in an informal setting frequently, and we get to live life get to live life together and what that means. So also think about a typical week at camp is about 120 hours if you take your Sunday to Friday typical camp schedule, right? Well, that's the same as attending worship worship and Sunday school or youth group for an entire year. You get that in a week at camp. Now, granted, that's not all formal learning like it is in the parish or the school or in your youth group time, but it gets to break down those walls, and you get to live as a real person, as a real Christian in those formal settings. So that's why I'm passionate about outdoors ministry, and I think that's why it has such a significant influence in the lives of children and young adults and adults.
Signe, what about you?
I think of camp as not more than just a break from school and that kind of learning, but it's a vital intervention for this anxious generation. They're under such tremendous pressure and experiencing the world in a way that for sure I didn't as a kid, with social media and all of those things that surround that. So camps are a place for a bit of a digital detox, I think, getting away from that. And as Bob said, living life alongside one another. The small group community experience that camps provide, I think, is vital for the faith development. Fellowship is such an important part of our faith development, and we live in such isolated ways. We're not out on our front porches, meeting kids out in the middle of the street, playing basketball, car, and then everybody runs out. I know those things still do happen, but probably with less frequency. And so this important time that shapes their lives, and they learn conflict management and problem solving. They learn resilience. I can do this thing that's hard. They learn all of those things at camp without even realizing it. We don't talk about it in that formal way with them, but they get to shoot a bow and arrow for the first time in their lives. And the look of exuberance on their face when they actually hit a target might not be in the middle, but they hit the target is amazing. And the problem solving that they go through, even if they experience fear and homesickness, that they get to work through those emotions with safe adults, young adults who are similar to them in many ways. And they get to hear and experience the faith of other young people and hear their stories. And sometimes they get to hear the stories, at least in our setting, they get to experience people who don't have faith or campers who don't have faith or come with a different background. Especially in our area, we have a lot of Mormon Latter-day Saints in our area, and some of them do come to our camp. And what an opportunity to share the truth of the gospel with them. And so those kids ask questions so innocently, like, what do you mean? Why would you believe that? Why wouldn't you believe this? In a way that adults might not be able to. So this immersion in nature, the rubbing elbows with people in small group community, and getting out in these high adventure activities provide something that doesn't happen in that 1 hour at church or at home. But we do it in this incredible partnership, I think, with churches. We need one another to continue to build the faith of these young people.
If I could jump in there too, one of the phrases that's often said around Camp Omega here is fun, friends, and faith, right? It's okay to have fun. There's nothing wrong with that as a goal, to go out and enjoy God's creation and play and have fun. And relationships are key, right? When we're in a relationship with someone, we're more inclined to listen to and understand and have a deep conversation with. And then Christ is our foundation. Faith is why Lutheran Outdoors Ministry exists, is to be able to share Jesus with people. So that fun, friends, and faith are part of our saying as we look towards what is it we're about and what are we trying to do. Have tons of fun, build awesome relationships, and understand how much Jesus loves us.
We're talking with Bob LaCroix, Executive Director of Camp Omega, and Signe White, Executive Director of Camp Perkins. We'll continue the conversation in just a moment. We're going to learn about what's happening at camp this summer.
Yeah.
Are you looking at registration yet?
I might have been, yes.
Opportunities for fun, learning, and growing together at camp this summer. And how are we encouraging future church workers? We're going to talk about all that in just a moment right here on the Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Golseth.
Are you looking to gain practical insights and spiritual encouragement in a format that fits your life? Discover the treasures of Christ-centered learning with Concordia University, Nebraska. Utilizing an online, self-paced learning platform, Concordia Nebraska's new Studia Vitae program will offer a non-credit continuing education courses featuring lifelong learning opportunities in a variety of focused areas. Courses begin in January 2026 and registration opens soon. Learn more at cune.edu/CEU. That's cune.edu/CEU.
KFUO Radio has been proclaiming the saving gospel of Christ Jesus for more than 100 years, and your support keeps that proclamation strong. Share-a-thon is April 30th through May 2nd. Remember that you can pledge now and pay later with a gift from your IRA or donor-advised fund. However you give, you help proclaim Christ for you and for all. Make your pledge today at kfuo.org.
Welcome back to the Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Golseth.
We're talking with Bob LaCroix, Executive Director of Camp Omega in Waterville, Minnesota, and Signe White, Executive Director of Camp Perkins in the Sawtooth Mountains of Idaho today, talking about camp and that experience that happens at camp. And does it play any part in shaping the hearts and minds of future church workers? I think so. Living experience.
Yeah, right here.
Having been at multiple camps, Lutheran camps, and they certainly were an important part of shaping who I am as a church worker today. Now, what does camp have to do with me sitting in a studio?
That's a great question.
Someday you'll find out. So let's talk about what's happening at camp this summer. Let's start with Camp Perkins. What's on the horizon for Camp Perkins this summer? I know you guys have lots of things going on, but maybe some of the highlights that you want to share with us.
I would say at Perkins, like many of our other camps, we are excited to have kids arriving soon. And we are looking at probably 500 or 600 kids coming through. Some of the other camps have more like 1,000 campers coming through. And one of my favorite days is the day that the summer staff arrive. We've been working on recruiting and hiring these young adults from all over the country because we work together. Our Lutheran camps work together to do the hiring all together. And so it's one of my favorite days when they show up, especially the ones who are from out of state and for the first time see those mountains rising up out of the lake. But to get to shape them and to bring them together as a team is a pretty special day. Well, in fact, it's more like 2 or 3 weeks of training, not just one day. Just to assure the parents out there, it's not just one day. But we're going to have all sorts of fun stuff. You know, the typical things, archery and climbing wall and boating and stand-up paddleboarding and hiking and playing mud football and going to the clay pits and all sorts of games and time together. So we're looking forward to that. Camp Perkins specifically is looking forward to some new exciting capital building projects that I will not bore you with the details of, but it has been a long journey to get there. And so we are excited for that specific thing to impact our ministry into the future.
Bob, what's happening this summer at Camp Omega?
Boy, a lot of the same things that Signe echoed. Getting excited for summer staff to arrive in a few short weeks. Busy with Lutheran schools doing outdoor education right now here at Camp Omega. We're saying goodbye to about 45 students this afternoon as they venture back home. But summer staff will be arriving soon. And for me, the exciting piece about the summer program, especially as it relates to staff, is just watching how God's working and changing in their lives. One of the first conversations we have when they arrive is I look them in the eye and I say, at the end of these 10 weeks, you're going to leave this place a different person than what you are now. And through that experience that God shapes and molds them, they open their eyes and they sometimes discover things that they thought they were passionate and excited about, and they're not. And they discover that they're not. But the opposite is true as well. Working with the youth and children, a lot of their eyes are open. They're like, you mean I made that impact on that child? Boy, this is fun. I could do this for a lifetime. I could share Jesus in congregations or missionary work or people with special needs or you name it. Their eyes are opened and a lot of them will say, you know, I didn't believe you when you said I was going to be different when I left here, but you were right. I am. God used this experience to shape me and mold me into a different person. And I'm excited about the future.
Yeah. Do you have stories of campers or staff who discovered through their time at camp that they actually were interested in full-time church work? Signe?
Well, let me tell you about this one particular young man. And it's kind of the long game, I think, of ministry. And it started with a foundation with his parents, as we've mentioned before, who prioritized his faith. And he went to a small rural congregation in southern Idaho. And his pastor poured into this small little youth group. I mean, they would have 5 or 6 kids that would show up, but he would take them on sermon events and have Bible study and have playtime with them. But he also came to Camp Perkins as a summer camper. And then he kind of came up through it. We have sort of a pipeline of leadership, a leadership laboratory, you could call it, where the campers have an opportunity to become what's called a leader in training at Camp Perkins. And many of our camps have this: junior staff, high school volunteers. They have these programs, CIT, LIT, all these different things. So this young man, he went into the LIT program and he became a lifeguard and he learned to play guitar and he did all these things. And he was convinced that his life was mapped out to be an electrician. But God had a different plan. And just this winter, after 4 summers at camp, he told the program director who was interviewing him to work at camp, he is feeling the call, a clear call into pastoral ministry. And it's amazing to hear that after all these years. And that's just one. I mean, we could tell you about all sorts of kids who come through that and choose a vocation that's going to be in service to the kingdom. But he is looking at pastoral ministry after his college experience. And so we're very excited to continue to shape and work with him this summer and give him opportunities to practice what it might be like for him in the future.
Bob, what is the connection of camp to, or the place of camp in the lives of future church workers? I know there's a connection at Omega as well.
Absolutely. It wasn't too many years ago, I was looking over the list of those young men who were going to enter the world as a pastor, graduating from one of our seminaries. Looking over the list, and I was recognizing some names, only to come to the realization that 7 of those people that graduated that one year all served as counselors at one point in their life here at Camp Omega. And so I can't say for a fact that serving at camp was the reason they entered pastoral ministry, but I can say that camp is a major influence in a lot of the lives of professional church workers for the reason that they chose to enter professional church work. Actually, there was a couple of studies done and some informal things done within our body to make that observation. It was asked of professional church workers how many of them was camp one of the major influences in their life that persuaded them or encouraged them to enter church work. And it's huge. It's 70-80% or so people on that particular area raised their hand or stood up and said, yeah, that was a major influencing in my life that pushed me and encouraged me and pressed on my heart the desire to serve professionally in church work.
What's one thing that you say that you think summer staff, camp staff might have to say about their experience working at summer camp and why it was worth it? Why it was worth the hours of the sweat, the lack of sleep, the dirt, all those things. Why was it worth it to spend a whole summer working at camp? What do they walk away with? Signe, you're nodding your head.
Well, I think they walk away with more than they ever bargained for.
True.
Not just because they can't get everything back in their suitcase when they try to leave, but they're walking away with deep friendships with other Christians that they can lean on, many of them for the rest of their lives. We had a summer staff reunion last summer, and to see the people who came back from the E's and the N's, and it wasn't like they were seeing some of these people for the first time since the 80s or 90s. They had spent time in between calling these people, talking to them. The other thing I think they leave with is for themselves, all those same things we said about the campers: resilience. I can do hard things. I had one young man who, after working at camp, he was applying for a job and sitting in an interview, and the interviewer asked him, have you ever had to work hard? And he started to explain what it was like to be a summer camp counselor. The 24/6 or 23 hours a day, 6 days a week that you spend giving and giving and giving. And the job interviewer just said, "Oh, I don't think I've ever heard of somebody working so hard." And he got the job. And because I think there's this sense that young adults don't necessarily have it as so hard, or they don't have to put in as much time. But man, when you work at camp, you are investing yourself mentally, emotionally, and physically, and you are growing spiritually through that experience. So resilience, problem solving, conflict management, public speaking, learning how to talk in front of people coherently, being able to set down your phone and not panic. All of those things are things they walk away from camp with.
Bob, do you have anything to add?
Signe did a great job in covering all those realms, and even the little things about caring for people. It's not about me anymore. It's about those people around me, and denying myself some opportunities because somebody else needs me as a counselor. That's high. That's priority. You're on duty basically 24/7 when you're a counselor, and you're in the trenches, and you're to care for those people that God has given you the opportunity to serve. And so that whole denial of oneself and looking to the needs of another person, I think, is a major impact on an individual's life as they serve as counselor.
The worst kept secret of what you can walk away from as a summer staffer is a future spouse.
I also met my wife at camp.
Yeah. Real life story here.
There are many.
There is that floating around. You want to meet your prime spouse, work at camp.
Yes, it is. Because you're finding people who have the similar values and goals and lifestyle choices, and all of those things come into play there. But you live and play together in a way you might not experience otherwise. So it's not a terribly well kept secret, but it happens more frequently than probably the camp directors want to admit.
Better be careful. We might start advertising that.
That's right.
What is one piece of wisdom or advice you would give to young people who are maybe considering camp, but maybe it sounds a little adventure-y and maybe a little scary, but also exciting? What is one piece of advice to encourage young people to look at camp ministry as they're thinking about possibly serving in full-time church work? Signe?
I would say just take the next step. Applying for the job, doing the interview, all of those things, none of that commits you to the whole summer. But starting to have those conversations. And I think the number one thing is to be in prayer about it, to seek the wisdom of the Spirit and those around you. And I would say, give it a try. You won't know unless you do it. It's one season of your life. You're not committing to 40 years of this. It's one 10-week, 12-week time frame.
It's true. Bob, what about you?
Yeah, and just as that was the mindset that I was having too. Just do it. Just go for it. Your life is going to be changed. You're going to find things out about yourself you don't like, but you're going to discover tons of things about yourself you like. And then there's nothing like it. Nothing else that exists in our world like a summer camp experience. And so let God work through that. And so you've only got one summer. Okay, well, we'll see. We know that we've had a lot of people say, "Oh, I can only do this once. This will be it." Well, guess what? They're back 4 or 5 more times because they fell in love with it. And then just the relationship piece. As Signe said, the staff come back and it's like they never left each other. There's people that I still remember and keep in touch with when I was a counselor at Camp Omega back many years ago. And so it's just life-changing. It really is.
We are just about out of time, but I want to point out one really important connection here is that camps like Camp Perkins and Camp Omega are connected. Signe, can you tell us a little bit about that connection? If young adults are looking for opportunities to serve this summer or next summer, how they can find out more about that?
Absolutely. We work together in this process of joint recruitment is what we call it. So we work together to recruit summer staff. We are looking for over 600 young adults to spend the summer at 22 different Lutheran camps across the country. So if you want to apply, you go to our website for NALOMA, the National Lutheran Outdoor Ministry Association. I'm sure you'll put the link in the show notes. And it is an opportunity. You fill out one application, but you get seen potentially by 22 different locations. And it's a variety of jobs, everything from social media, which, we just maybe squashed a little bit, but we still participate in social media. And there's, engineering goals with maintenance, and we have counselors. We've focused on counselors, but we have all sorts of positions. There's camps that hire just adventure leaders and kitchen staff and housekeeping staff, support staff. So if you're like, I'm not sure I want to be with kids all day, every day, we have jobs for that. We've got everything. So I encourage you to check that out at www.naloma.org.
That's NLOMA.org. Our guest today, Signe White, Executive Director of Camp Perkins in the Sawtooth Mountains of Idaho. Signe, thanks for joining us today.
You bet. Thank you for having us.
And Bob LaCroix, Executive Director, Camp Omega in Waterville, Minnesota. Thanks so much, Bob, for being our guest.
Yeah, you are most welcome. Thanks for having me. May I have just a moment to say one more piece? So Signe brought up NALOMA. The National Lutheran Outdoors Ministry Association has got a new initiative going. One of the main reasons, or one of the high factors that people don't want to work at camp is they say they got to earn more money, right? We're nonprofits, et cetera. So the initiative that NALOMA has started is a scholarship fund. So traditionally, summer staff can expect to get about $300 a week. So we're working on a scholarship endowment fund for students where they can apply for a scholarship, possibly up to $1,500, which would increase that summer wage. It wouldn't be considered income. It would be a scholarship, so it could be applied directly to their school, non-taxable, et cetera. So a new initiative that's coming up on the line to help make working at camp more financially possible for students who are wavering on it because of money. So we're really excited to push this out. Hopefully in the coming years, it'll be a slow initiative, a lot of fundraising, but hopefully in the coming years, we can make this reality for all young adults who want to work at camp during the summer through the NALOMA process.
Very good. You can find more at NLOMA.org, NALOMA.org. You've been listening to The Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Golseth.
The Coffee Hour with Andy and Sarah is a production of KFUO. To support The Coffee Hour and KFUO Radio, visit KFUO.org. You can also text KFUO to 41444 or send an email to gifts@KFUO.org. And you can call us at 800-844-0524. KFUO. Christ for you, anytime, anywhere.